Hello everybody, thank you for joining me. I hope this video is not a complete waste of your time. I'm really just testing a new camera and microphone setup, and I thought I would do a fun video today in which I'm doing one of those tier rankings, the ones that all the kids on YouTube are doing these days, in which you rank everything from an S tier through a D tier. And I'm doing that for PPC Industries, specifically lead generation. I decided that it might be a kind of a fun exercise, but I did keep e-commerce off just because I felt like it was its own world. There are so many subcategories within e-commerce, so I might do an entire video about e-commerce later. For now, I'm keeping it to lead generation. And yeah, it's going to be kind of an exercise in which we go through the different types of Google industries, Google Ads industries that you might find yourself managing if you own an agency or if you have worked in an agency. These are going to be some of the most common industries for which you have managed accounts in the past. And I'm ranking them based on a set of different characteristics, how easy or how difficult these accounts are to manage, in terms of how competitive they are, how many optimizations you have to do, how time consuming it can be to manage these kinds of accounts, in terms of offline conversion tracking and providing and generating real business results, how difficult is it to actually visualize an ROI within the account, or just being able to understand whether the ads are generating a good ROI. Growth potential, so how easily or how big these accounts can get, how difficult is it to scale these accounts. And there's I guess an X factor, a tilt factor as well that I'm going to bring up from time to time if it's just the kind of industry that I enjoy working in. So you may be familiar with this tier list system, in which you might have seen YouTube videos of people using this, where they basically we take these little and we put them in these different categories just to rank them based on our preference, right? So I have 12 categories here, as I said, 12 different industries, and we're going to start with the ones on the right and move on to the industries on the left. So we're starting with legal, and this is a great industry, I think. If there are many agencies that this is all they do. They specialize in legal PPC or legal digital marketing, legal ads, legal SEO. So legal, I'm going to put it in the A. I can't really go quite S tier, but the thing that if you have ever managed legal accounts, is the main characteristic of a legal Google Ads client, legal Google Ads account, high CPCs, especially for personal injury, but really for a lot of different foreclosure. I remember foreclosure lawyers can be hundreds of dollars as well. Personal injury law, criminal defense can be pretty high. So, but primarily those like accident lawyers, personal injury lawyers, those can have CPCs, cost per clicks, going into the hundreds of dollars. So $100, $200 clicks, $300 clicks or more. And that results in very high budgets. So these are very high stakes accounts where you make a mistake and you could lose thousands of dollars in a single day. You have law firms that are easily spending 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 a month on Google, especially the larger law firms. So these are very, very scalable businesses, because sometimes spending too little is just too little. You do need to spend quite a bit to get those big cases. So offline conversion tracking can be a little challenging sometimes. It can take a little while to build a case. But for the most part, there is a very clear funnel, right? Somebody calls, are they qualified, are they not qualified? They meet with I guess it's a paralegal or maybe one of the lawyers to understand the case, and then they decide to take them on as a client or not. And then finally, the case might close months later, and that's when the law firm gets paid. So there is a very long cycle, but you can at least track down business results down to the point where you're delivering qualified leads that are turning into signed cases. So at that point, you know that your ads are working, and you can keep scaling and keep building up more campaigns and more cases. One thing I mentioned before, how easy, how difficult it is to manage. And if you have an agency and you have a lot of legal clients, these are fairly easy to manage in the sense that you can just copy one campaign to another. If you have two different personal injury lawyers in different parts of the country, you're targeting one in California, you have another lawyer in New York, you can just copy the same campaign most of the time, use the same structures from one client to another. So it saves you a lot of time managing your different accounts. Obviously, you're going to change the locations, the ads, the keywords, some of the keywords, the location specific keywords, but you know what I mean. It's very easy to just copy and paste those structures in the Google Ads editor, and saves you a lot of time. So the only reason it's not really going into the S tier is because it can take a long time for you to see that revenue come in, and it's very high stakes. It's very easy to, in the blink of an eye, you have a $3,000-$4,000 cost per conversion. It looks really, really bad sometimes, and it can be very stressful if you have clients that can be intense in this industry, right? So legal is going into the A category, though. I think these are great Google Ads clients to have, and if you have the ability to go after them and manage them, you should keep going after more of them. So going A tier for legal. Let's go with the next one, which is dentistry. One of the most common niches industries that you might find yourself in Google Ads. I put dentistry in its own category, even though it really should fall under the healthcare umbrella. I thought about doing a general healthcare category, but I feel like dentistry is going to be one of the most common niches you find in Google Ads. I'm putting dentistry in B tier though, because these are very easy accounts to manage in my experience for the most part. Copy paste, as I said, from legal, you can copy the structure from one account into another and replicate that. If you have a successful account, you can just easily replicate it for a different business in a different location. So very easy to replicate, very easy to manage. But the thing about them is that they're not as big as, for example, legal, where I was talking about businesses that spend 10, 20, 30, 40, maybe even 100,000 a month on legal. But with dentistry, most accounts are spending 1,000 a month, 2,000 a month, and they're not very scalable because there are so many dentists everywhere. So you're really just targeting a 1, 2, 3 mile radius, maybe 5 miles at most, but you really can't go that far unless your dentist is in a very remote area. But that's not that common. Like in most cities, you will have dentists around every block, so you can't really target very far because people aren't willing to drive that far for a dentist. They usually just go to whoever's nearest as long as they have good reviews. So it's generally going to be small businesses, especially if you're doing just teeth whitening, general dentistry, even emergency dentistry. But if you're doing veneers and implants, dental implants, those are the great dentistry accounts to have because those can be really big. Those are high stakes. Those can be tens of thousands of dollars for one dental implant procedure, right? So you might find yourself spending $10,000 for a dental implants campaign in a big city if you are one of the best ones in the city. There aren't a lot of competitors, and these are high revenue businesses, right? So. But for the most part, most of the dentistry accounts are spending on just the general dentistry. And those, like I said, are smaller accounts for the most part. So for me, I'm putting it in the B category. Next, this house here represents real estate. So this is tricky. Real estate, I'm deciding whether I'm just putting it in C or a D. And I think this is going to be a D. Real estate, I'm going to go D category. I've never enjoyed managing any real estate accounts just because what I was talking about earlier, when it comes to the click to the sale, for homes, it really just takes forever. It takes forever for a house to sell. People could be researching homes years in advance, like a year in advance, 6 months in advance before they're even deciding to actually buy a house. So it takes a long time. These accounts, I feel like I'm always just flying blind. Sometimes you're managing a listing website. They have like 100 houses, and you might be tracking a few things on the website. You might be tracking phone calls. You might be tracking maybe some form submissions, things like that. Maybe a home tour. But for the most part, I never find myself being able to really speak to one of these clients and say, and really understand, okay, how many houses have you sold? And how do we know if any of these sales came from the ads? It really feels like you're just kind of blind. Most of these companies just spend a little bit on Google, and they never really, because you don't get that sense of ROI. So it takes so long to buy a house that there isn't really a way to measure it as far as I've been able to find. So they really just spend a couple thousand on Google. So these are low management, or I should say low spend accounts as well. So for me, I'm putting it in D. I feel comfortable. This is one of my least favorite industries to manage in Google, but there are a lot of them out there, and these are good beginner accounts because they do get a lot of conversions. So if all you're measuring is conversions and cost per conversion, and those are just your main metrics, and that's what you're reporting to clients, these can be good entry-level accounts to manage. They're not very complicated. The main issue I have with these is they're not very big, not very scalable, and like I said, very, very difficult in terms of offline conversion tracking, or pretty much impossible, I would say, in some cases. So real estate is a D for me. Next, this is gyms, fitness. This is anything that has to do with fitness programs, wellness centers, anything like that. I'm gonna go B. I think I'm gonna go B on these because, especially if it's like online lessons, online courses, that kind of thing, where you can sell a digital product, digital recordings, that kind of thing. That's great because that takes it to the S tier in terms of just the offline conversion tracking, because you are measuring ROI. It's almost like an e-commerce within the lead generation account, right? You're measuring that ROI in the business. Anything that is a gym, a cycling business, anything like that. A little bit tricky. You never really get a great ROI on the initial sales, meaning the cost per lead, the number of leads that you're getting, because it can be competitive. So the number of leads that you're driving is never really going to translate into enough sales for the business on the initial sales. I think this business really is all about the LTV. Okay, so if somebody signs up for a gym membership, how long did they stay, right? Because maybe you paid $100 to acquire a client. It took you $100 maybe your CPA is like 60, 70, and you generated 50 leads, and out of the 50 leads, maybe only 20 of those ended up signing up for a gym membership. So you lost money on Google Ads, but at what point do you get that money back through the LTV? If people stay around 6 months, do you start to see your money back by month 3, by month 4? So understanding the LTV is really, really important for this particular business. So I enjoy it for those reasons, but I've never been able to find gyms that are too scalable. Is usually one gym. I've never been able to work with too many like franchises, although I'm pretty sure they're out there. But I honestly don't have enough experience with gyms, with fitness accounts, to really put it in the A or S. But I'm sure that if I had more of these kinds of businesses and made them work, they probably would be in the A category for me. But for me, I'm just going to put it in B. Next, this glove here represents home services. So this can be a wide range of categories. We're talking plumbing, roofing, HVAC, maybe even pest control and home services, and landscaping, lawn care. Like I said, there's a wide range of categories here. I could have done, each of those could have been its own subcategory in this list, but I feel like I would have just taken forever. For me, for home services, I'm just going to put that in the S category. This is pretty much one of the best industries to be in if you manage Google Ads, because these are oftentimes some of the easiest, most easily to replicate businesses, easy to manage, not that time consuming. Usually a lot of these businesses will have a HubSpot or a Salesforce or a CRM that you can easily integrate with Google Ads, or use Zapier to send your offline conversions to Google Ads. So it's easy to measure those business results, to track those offline conversions and get those business results inside of the account. So most of these businesses are very scalable, even though they're very local. The CPCs tend to be expensive a lot of the time. So you're talking more than $10, $20, $30. So sometimes they require high ad spends. You're never going to have a single business that is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars unless they're like a major franchise, like a big pest control franchise, and you can land a client like that. But these are very healthy, stable businesses that generally get a good ROI, and they get high conversion rates. So you're talking conversion rates above 10%, 10, 15% a lot of the time. So you're measuring a lot of conversions all the time, reporting conversions back to the client, talking business with the client. So it's all about, okay, we got 20 leads. How many of those leads closed? Okay, how much revenue did you make on that? Did we make the money back? And you might not even be having those conversations if you are just simply connecting the CRMs and importing those leads back into Google Ads. So great businesses to be in. You can niche down and just do an agency on plumbing, do an entire agency on HVAC, do an entire agency on roofing, and that can be your specialty. But I take all of these kinds of clients. I enjoy working with pretty much all of them. And this is going to be the first S tier, and might be the only one. Let's see. Next here is restaurants or any kind of food-related business. And I'm wondering if I should put this one in the C or in the D category. I'm going to put it in the C. This has that X factor where it's a little bit interesting to manage these kinds of businesses. They're kind of fun because you're looking at food all the time. You're doing image assets, image extensions where you're putting food, and you might be doing some video ads as well, and you're looking at food. So you can tell I like food, but for the most part, this is a C just because these businesses are fairly small. I've never managed a very, very large restaurant type business. Now, there would be an exception here if you are managing an online sort of a food delivery kind of business, those big companies that deliver food. If you're doing that kind of thing, that might actually be a very strong business. Also, like gyms, like fitness, very much about the LTV. You might be losing on the initial sales, but how long do people stay subscribed? So any kind of subscription service for food, that's fantastic. Never been able to manage an account like that. So for me, I'm just thinking more in terms of just restaurants. I've had some catering companies, and those are much better. When it comes to restaurants, they're very small because you don't get a good ROI on a restaurant, right? You might spend 30, 40, 50, $60 to acquire a client, and they get to the restaurant, and how much are they going to spend? If it's one person, they might spend, or if it's two people, they might spend $100, maybe $200, depending on how expensive the restaurant is. But you just don't get great margins and great ROI when it comes to restaurants. So never been a great industry for PPC, but catering can be a little bit better because a food catering service can be several $1,000s, right? So that is a little bit better, a little bit easier, and you might be driving some leads for a catering business. But anything that's just food restaurant, not as good. And I've just found that because the margins are so small, I'll put it in the C, but it can work out, and it depends on the kind of business, really. If it's that kind of business where it's like subscription services, that kind of thing, it can be an A. It can be a really, really great business type. But for me, I'm just going to put it in C for now. Again, don't get too upset if you disagree with any of these choices. It has to do with my own personal experiences as well. Next is automotive. So anything that is a car dealership or automotive repair parts, that kind of thing. This is one of the categories or one of the industries that we have a lot of clients on at our agency, Jack Pine Media. It's one of our top niches. Don't know why we've had so many automotive clients over the years, but I guess we get a lot of referrals, like because we do a good job with them. Car dealerships will bring in more car dealerships. Sometimes they're part of a franchise, so they give us more businesses to work with. But yeah, I enjoy working with car dealerships. I'm putting it in the A category, not the S, and I'll explain why. But the things I really like about car dealership accounts, they're very scalable, first of all. They're not that difficult to manage. They are a little bit time consuming. That is one thing that maybe keeps it from an S. They can be a little bit time consuming. You get monthly incentives from the car dealership, so you have to constantly update ads. That's fairly common with a lot of car dealership accounts. You know, the first of every month, you're going to have to update a lot of your ads. Google introducing the headline and description assets made this a lot faster, a lot easier, but it's still something you have to do every month. One thing I enjoy is you do run pretty much every campaign type on Google for this kind of business. You're running everything from search, display, you might be running demand gen, you might be running video, remarketing, display remarketing, search remarketing, and you might even be doing Performance Max specifically for shopping now, because you can do shopping ads for cars, and not a lot of people know that, but you should be doing shopping ads for cars if the goal is to generate sales. Those are the best. That's the best campaign type at the moment to translate into sales. So those are very powerful, and we enjoy running all sorts of campaigns. So it's scalable in many different ways. It's scalable in the sense that there's new models coming out every single year. So if you've been managing an account every year, or for many years, every year there's a new model, right? So let's say you have a campaign for a Honda CRV. You might be creating a 2026 ad group because the 2026 cars are about to come out, or the dealership lets you know, hey, we have the 2020 or the 2025 cars. For some cars, they're already on the 2026 models. But point is, every year you're creating like a new ad group, or you're adding new keywords. You're using a lot of keyword level final URLs to send people to the specific page of the car for that specific keyword. So if you have a 2024 model, you want to send people to the 2024 car. If you have a 2023 model, you want to send them to the 2023 car. You're doing all sorts of things. You're adding image assets at the ad group level or at the campaign level. You might start with a simple structure, just a dealership, a car dealership near me, best car dealerships in my area, that kind of campaign, those kinds of keywords. And maybe you have a used car campaign, a new car campaign, and your ad groups are different models that you sell. But maybe you start breaking it up and you start scaling, and now every model is its own campaign. You're putting $30 in this type of car in the CRV. You're putting $30 on the Honda CRV or on the Honda HRV. You're doing like different budgets for every single campaign, and you start scaling the account that way, growing the account that way. And you talk to your client, and it's more about, okay, we want to generate more new car sales, or sometimes we want to generate. I remember during the pandemic, it was all about used cars because there was a shortage on the supply chain. So there weren't enough new cars in the dealerships. So the dealerships were really trying to sell used cars. So we started to push the used car campaigns. The shopping ads came in very handy for that kind of thing. So very scalable, very interesting accounts to manage. You're running all kinds of campaigns. You're running video ads. You're using a lot of car commercials sometimes as your video ads. So yeah, I enjoy car dealerships very much. The reason it's not an S tier, though, I said can be time consuming. And the other thing is that it can be difficult. A lot of car dealerships work with these very, very specific CRMs. And they're not using the common CRMs that are easy to integrate with Google Ads and to upload into a Google Sheet using something like Zapier. They're using a very, very specific, sometimes pretty bad CRMs. Sometimes these CRMs we don't have access to because they're controlled by a different company. So at least that's been my experience. So it's been very difficult to actually be able to measure how much of our sales is turning into, how much of our budget or our campaigns and our clicks are turning down the line into sales. That's been a little bit difficult to measure from time to time. So I'm keeping cars or automotive in the A category. This computer here represents B2B SaaS, or software as a service, any of those kinds of businesses. And I know that there are entire agencies that do this specifically, and kudos to you if you do that, because this is one of the most difficult industries, I would say, in all of PPC. This is one of the industries that everybody's always looking for help. It's like, how do you make B2B SaaS work? It's one of those industries that if you give it to a rookie, to somebody who's new in Google Ads, it's always kind of a nightmare kind of account because it doesn't convert, or if you don't know what you're doing, it can be very, very difficult. And that's why I'm putting it in the C category. One of the reasons it's very difficult is what I was talking about earlier, right? The offline conversion tracking. I work with some businesses that they are in the SAP consulting space. So they're doing these are like enterprise level softwares, right, for factories, for warehouses, for supply chain companies, and implementation or consulting for some of these things. These are very tailored software for B2B companies, and implementation of some of these softwares can take a very, very long time. Just it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It can be to sell one of these things because it's a very specific high level software that is built for that factory. So sometimes it can take a long time to close one of these deals. So this is an account that requires a lot of strategy. You have to build a lot of campaigns. A lot of these companies don't have high budgets, ironically, though, even though they require a very structured or several different campaigns and a lot of different campaigns targeting the entire funnel. You have to have sort of a top of funnel campaign using something like a lead magnet. So you have to create some kind of PDF or an ebook, a webinar, something that you can give away for free. Then you take those leads and you do email marketing to nurture them. You have to do remarketing on those emails, create a customer list. You have to have a campaign for middle of funnel in which you're maybe using keywords that are solving or talking about keywords that solve very, very specific problems. And then you might be doing more bottom of funnel and branded campaigns as well that are more about the specific solution the CRM or the actual SaaS software provides. So very difficult accounts to manage. Kudos to everybody who is specifically working in this industry and managing these kinds of accounts exclusively, because I've always found them to be very difficult, and that's why they're going in the C category for me. Next is education. So this can be anything that has to do with schools, universities, but also like online courses. And if we're talking online courses, if it's like a digital product, as I was saying earlier, that can be fantastic. That can be really, really good because you can get that direct ROI and you can basically treat it almost like an e-commerce account, even though you're probably just running search ads, but search and maybe display in YouTube. But when it comes to schools, universities, I'm just going to put this in the B category. I don't have, kind of like with gyms, I don't have that much of a preference or enough experience with a lot of these businesses to really give an opinion other than what I've said before. If it's like a digital product, if it's online courses, I feel like that can give you a much better ROI. But I've also found that it can be very competitive. Like the online coaches, the online lessons that I've run Google Ads for, there's like 50 others, right? And there's all the other online courses you can find on LinkedIn Learning or School or any of these online platforms that are out there now for learning just in general. So it is getting very, very competitive. So unless it's something very, very niche and very specific, I think it can be very difficult to run ads for. Next is going to be cosmetic procedures or med spas. And I'm going to put this in the A category. This is the other niche that we at Jackpine Media pretty much specialize in. We get a lot of referrals. I think that's why we've ended up with so many med spas and cosmetic surgery clinics and doctors. We just get referred to a lot by others. So doctor has a friend and they refer a friend. But anyway, this particular industry, enjoy working in it a lot. They are very, very scalable, not that difficult to manage. You can, same with dentistry, you can just copy one campaign from one business and replicate it in another business, just changing the locations, the keywords, and the ads. The thing, and it's much more scalable than dentistry. That's why I like it more, because some of these businesses can be very big. I've worked with hair transplant doctors that are spending over 50, 60, 70,000 a month on Google. I've worked with med spas that are spending over 100,000 a month on Google, and these are more like franchises. They have multiple locations, but they can spend quite a bit. They can be very, very big clients. Sometimes they're very small clients. They can be spending just a couple thousand on Google, but they have so many services within their clinic. You can be talking about on the med spa side, it might be the same building, that they have a cosmetic surgery side. So they might have a doctor who's doing cosmetic procedures, and they might have a clinic side or a med spa side where they're doing facial procedures, Botox injections, that kind of thing, cool sculpting. So it's a wide range of procedures. In the same business, you might have the option of running campaigns for cool sculpting, for Botox, for semaglutide, for liposuction, for breast augmentation, for facelift, for 10 different kinds of facial treatments, HydraFacial, Clear and Brilliant. There's like, it never ends. You might see it. You go into one of these websites and you go to their drop down and they have like 50 different procedures. So it's so scalable because they just have so many things that you can advertise for. And if one thing is not working, you can just talk to the client and say, okay, why don't we try, okay, cool sculpting is not working. Why don't we try liposuction? So you can try different types of businesses and really test a lot of different things. You can test a lot of things on the landing pages. You can come up with all sorts of offers on the landing pages to improve your conversion rate. So a lot of things you can do. The reason it's not an S, two things. A lot of med spas that we've worked with, they usually tend to use, for compliance reasons, they tend to use, kind of like with dealerships, they tend to use very specific CRMs because something like HubSpot, something like Salesforce, I believe HubSpot is not HIPAA compliant. So that means that they are not allowed to use something like HubSpot because it doesn't protect patient privacy. So they have to get these special CRMs that do protect the patient privacy. And these are sometimes, most of the time, not easy to integrate with Google Ads, with Google Sheets, with Zapier to send your offline conversion into Google. I end up doing a lot of manual work on these accounts. It's very time consuming because I end up spending a lot of time trying to track down leads that turn into sales, going through their CRM and comparing my form submissions to the CRM and seeing what closed. Or sometimes we do create a sheet for the client to market for us, but it's been difficult to come up with a good process to automate this for this particular industry. So that's why it's not going to the S. And the other thing to keep in mind is there are some policy issues that you might run into with Google specifically because they do restrict Botox, Restylane, PRP, Dysport, stem cell, any of those kinds of things. It's restricted. You cannot have it on your ads, on your keywords, on your landing page, even on the website code. So you do have to also consistently build specific landing pages for all of your ads, because if on your drop down on the website you have Botox, you're going to get this approved on Google. So you have to consistently build landing pages that don't have any of that stuff, that don't have anything even on the code. So you have to constantly build landing pages. You can get approved for Botox. There are ways to do it. You might need to get, the business needs to have something like a certification. What is the name of it? I forget the name of it. I'll put it in here somewhere because for whatever reason it's escaping me right now. And there are other ways of advertising for Botox, even if you don't have that certificate. But you can get ads running on Botox. It can be very tricky, and you do run into a lot of disapprovals all the time, so it can be a little bit annoying. But for the most part, I really enjoy working with med spas and doctors, so that's going in the A category. 2 more to go. Finance. So finance, I think, is also going to go in the A category. Not sure if I'm putting it in the B. One of the biggest clients I ever managed in the financial services space. So to clarify, this can be banks, financial advisors, insurance companies. One of the biggest clients I ever managed or worked on was a mortgage company, spending $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a month on Google. So a very, very big business competing with major banks. And these can be fairly good to track in terms of CRM-wise, fairly good for offline conversion tracking. This was a long time ago, but that particular business, one of the biggest mistakes that we made is not tracking offline conversions. So if that helps anybody out there, if you ever manage a big account, the most important thing you got to do if you're managing one of those big businesses is to track your offline conversions and try to demonstrate real business results. Otherwise, they will leave you. It's inevitable. So these are very difficult businesses to manage, especially on the higher end. There are some compliance issues with Google, so you're not allowed to do zip code level targeting for anything that's financial services related for privacy reasons. You're not allowed to do, I think it's bid adjustments on particular demographics either. So if you're running like manual CPC ads, there are some issues there that you run into. But for the most part, this is not a huge deal breaker in terms of optimizations. These accounts can be a little bit time consuming, but it mostly just depends on the size. Like I said, there's not that many issues when it comes to offline conversions. These can be fairly easy to track the business results, at least in my experience, and they have a lot of growth potential. Like I said, one of the biggest clients I ever worked with was in this particular industry. So happy to take more of them. And the last category here is going to be travel and hospitality. So I think I'm going to go. I'm going to go in the C category just because this can be a wide range of different industries, right? Because we could be talking just hotels, we could be talking airlines, we could be talking travel companies or travel agencies. I think that if it's one of those, that is a very difficult business in Google Ads, basically just because so many people use Hotels.com, Booking.com, Priceline, Expedia. Everybody's used to those kinds of businesses, and it's so difficult to compete with that. It's like going up against Amazon, right? So it's just so hard to get a business to perform well in that particular category, with that level of competition. But I think if you have a very, very specific niche, a very unique experience or travel package, if you're like a catamaran vacation on the Mediterranean, or if it's a fishing expedition for in Key West, something that's very, very specific like that, I think those businesses can work really well. But for me, in my experience, just managing these kinds of businesses, if you're like a travel agency in New York, like good luck. That is so competitive and it's very, very hard to make work and to get like a good ROI. Although, to be honest, like any industry in Google, I don't want to discourage anybody who is listening and thinking, oh, I'm not going to take those kinds of clients, or I'm not going to run ads for my business for that. Anything on Google Ads can work. Any kind of business can work on Google Ads. It's not to discourage anybody from from running ads in any of these industries. This is just, like I said at the beginning, it's my personal preference. And that's basically it. Those are the 12 industries that I've decided to rank in this particular video. Let me know if you'd like me to do a similar kind of video in the future, whether it's e-commerce or more of these tier rankings or just videos where I'm just talking nonstop for 30 minutes about Google Ads. Because as you can see, I can talk a lot about Google Ads and time flies for me. So let me know what kind of content you'd like to see more of in this channel. I'm testing all sorts of things. I'll probably go back to the regular podcast format that I've been doing in the last couple of weeks at some point, but in the channel, I'm hoping to also post these kinds of videos from time to time. And again, hope you found it interesting. If you want to see more of it, hit the like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment letting me know what kind of additional videos you'd like to see. So thanks again for watching. Until next time.